Dear Kali Today's viewers, I am Duyen Nguyen, in Vietnamese Nguyễn Hoàng Duyên. I am a lawyer, practice law in San Jose, California, and I am a team member of the Kali Today Daily News in San Jose, California. However, the conversation today is jointly held between Kali Today and Viên Media. And by my side is A.C. Thompson, a journalist from ProPublica. Good morning, my audience.
Good morning. I'm A.C. Thompson. I live here in Northern California. I've been an investigative reporter since 1998.
Early in the year 2014, under the auspices of ProPublica and Frontline, journalists A.C. Thompson and Rick Rowley have reopened the investigation of the file involving the violent and deadly acts against some Vietnamese journalists between 1981 and 1990 on the American soil. And this investigation has led to the production of a documentary file named Terror in Little Saigon. Tôi tạm dịch là khủng bố ở Little Saigon, which PBS has begun broadcasting since early November 2015. The reaction in the Vietnamese community this far has been vigorous and very widespread. The feedbacks are mixed. Some praise the documentary as courage work of journalism, and others criticize the film as biased, half-truth, gravely offensive to the Vietnamese American community. So, in the interest of good journalism, Kali Today News and Viên Media are holding this cordial conversation with journalist A.C. Thompson, and we hope that throughout this candid conversation, we will hear more from A.C. on the meanings that not clear to us at this moment. So first, good morning, A.C.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. So I start with the name of the film. In the English language, terror means acts of terrorism,
right,
of violence. Little Saigon is the name of a community, a minority community. And the name Little Saigon come to existence after all the violent acts have happened. Yeah? So, and to many people, the people in other communities in America, when they hear the word Little Saigon, automatically they think of the Vietnamese community. So when the members of the Vietnamese community they see the title, automatically they feel a link, a connection between our community and terrorism. No. Let me finish my question. So the thing is, they feel like you have a place, the community, in a very false light, very dark light. That subject the Vietnamese community to loathe, hatred, discrimination. So now we want to hear from you on, number one, how do you explain about that, and why do you come up with the title linking the two different things that are not related to each other?
So they absolutely actually are totally related to each other, and we could have called the documentary Terror in the Vietnamese American Community. But I think people felt that the name In Little Saigon was basically a stand-in for the Vietnamese American community, as you've just said. a lot of these communities were calling themselves Little Saigon communities during the 80s when these things happened, even if they were not formally named Little Saigons. So the name is a shorthand, and it is appropriate in many ways. I understand that it's hard for some people to hear, but the truth is, in that time period, the 1980s, there were a lot of death threats going on. There was terrorism going on. People who had views that were not politically popular in the Vietnamese American community were getting death threats on the phone. They were going out in the mail, and at times they were being killed and attacked. And these would be people, for example, people who criticized the front, the Mat Tran. It would be people who were advocating for normalization of relations between the U.S. and Vietnam. And in some cases, they were people who had very controversial views in that they were pro-Ho Chi Minh or pro the Hanoi regime. So this absolutely happened, and it's a chapter of history that we felt needed to be explored because people were still nervous about talking about it, and that these sort of incidents were happening in the U.S. when people had fled from tyranny and then had come here and at times had brought that tyranny with them and kept other people from expressing themselves freely. And that wasn't why people came to the U.S.
So, in a way, up to this point, you still believe that the title linking terrorism and Little Saigon is still appropriate, even after like the feedbacks that we heard from the community that we are a community, we are victims of torture, murders, persecution by the communist government. We came here, we are building a community, we promote peace, democracy. We want to adapt the American ideology into our community. Now that a film published by PBS, a major media in America, still believe that okay, it is very appropriate, even if you think Vietnamese community is somewhat related to terrorism, you still feel that appropriate?
This is the truth. The problem is that...
No. Hold on. When you say the truth, even during your investigation, we see that, and everybody will see that it's just half truth. And then we get to that later. But even at this point, and assuming that is the truth, you still believe that we, the Vietnamese community, should be connected to an organization, the front, or a unit whatsoever. You feel that is very appropriate?
Here's the thing. The thing is to look at the victims here.
Okay.
To look at the victims. The victims lived in Vietnamese American communities. Mm-hmm. The victims felt they were terrorized. The words that they used were, I was terrorized. In the same way that terrorists operate in other places, I felt terrorized. The crimes that were investigated were terrorist crimes. That's what was investigated.
Yeah.
Now, this is not saying that everyone in the community is responsible for terrorism. Clearly not. And to take that and to make that leap is absurd.
Okay.
The truth is, though, I'm talking about Vietnamese American victims of terrorism. That is the focus. That's the focus. And those are the people whose stories have in many cases been forgotten. And part of this effort is to illuminate what they went through when they fled tyranny, when they fled repression, and then encountered it here.
Okay.
And that's why we can argue about the title. I can understand why some people don't like it.
No, I'm giving you an opportunity to explain. No, I'm not arguing with you. You explain to me, please. If I read a headline on American newspaper and it says that the beheading of American journalists by the Muslims, as opposed to the beheading of American journalists by ISIS. You see, ISIS is one entity, Muslim is another entity, and by, if I put the headline, the beheading of American journalists by the Muslims, how do you feel if you are a Muslim?
I understand the criticism, but on the other hand, how would you describe, what would you title the film?
Okay, I will title it, say, the violent acts against the Vietnamese journalists on the American soil. Period. Simple like that. So, okay, I'm not accusing.
Uh-huh.
I'm not accusing.
Uh-huh.
This is a suggestion. Let's say, if had you and PBS work with some Vietnamese advisors, I think you will have a better title. And this is for the interest of PBS and you as a journalist. And if up to this point you still believe that, okay, connecting ISIS and Muslim are the same thing, then we can move on to another question. How about that?
Well, the thing that you should understand is that we actually did work with Vietnamese Americans on every step of the process.
Okay.
The truth of the matter is that as a journalist, I don't get to choose the title. That's a decision made above me. Mm-hmm. I can understand the unhappiness with it. I think it's misplaced. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, the title that you just described doesn't work for TV because it's too many words and they don't let us use that many words. But the truth is, this is about, is people can feel that it's offensive to Vietnamese Americans. They can feel it makes the community look bad. The truth is the incidents happened in the community. And if we had said terrorism against Vietnamese Americans, some people would say you're making the whole community look bad with that. You know, and it wouldn't have been a lot different than if we had said terror in Little Saigon.
And you see, let's move on, because you already admitted that. You said that you have no control over the title. So I just hope, okay, for the better understanding, for a civil and intelligent understanding between PBS and the Vietnamese community, if there's the will, there's the way. If they want to, they will choose another name. Is more appealing, but more appropriate. I'm just saying that when we move on to the next question. Is that fair?
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
Fair. The next question is, where in the film, when we take the picture from, like a Vietnamese gathering during, festivals, those kind of things, and the interpretation that when a group of South Vietnam military people, they wear the uniforms, those kind of things, the interpretation is that is a show of their intent to restart the war. The feedback that we heard is that, so is it fair if we say, okay, now when in any commemoration of the Civil War, we see people wearing uniform, those kind of things, those people want to restart the Civil War, like they see the unfair and inappropriate interpretation of that details. What is your explanation to the audience?
So the interpretations that people make are the interpretations that people make. That's not necessarily what we're trying to put out there, and that's definitely not what we tried to put out there. I can't control what the way that people read.
Not the way the people read. This is the way the film reads.
Every text has multiple ways to read it. Every film has multiple ways to be interpreted.
Okay, if we have multiple ways to interpret it, okay, is that the responsibility of the filmmakers or of the viewers to choose the way that make least misunderstanding between the parties?
If people are unhappy about including that footage, that's not what it was meant to say. I apologize that they think that. What we're doing is basically using a scene to say, hey, we're back in America, we're in Orange County, and this is where we are. It's a scene in there to place us at that place.
Okay. Again, when I have asked a question, you give the answer. I don't want to just argue back and forth about your answer. We just move on to the next question, okay? In the documentary, throughout the film, we heard that, okay, even the interview here or when you interviewed the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister of Thailand, the sense is that the front or whatever unit that you investigate, they seems like they have very strong support from some authorities. Is that true?
You mean on the U.S. side?
On the U.S. side, yes.
No, I don't think so. I do not believe so. I believe that there was, in all likelihood, no covert aid to the front, to the Matran, other than Richard Armitage, who was then a top Pentagon official, helping the group to set up its operations in Thailand by vouching for Mr. Wang Ko-min to the Thai military, to the Thai generals. That's what I believe. And that's what should come through in the film and the writing.
Okay. In around between 1980 and 1990, in America, common sense, we know that the law enforcement, the authority, the CIA, the FBI, they do have the resource and the power to bring to justice some wrongdoings, the terrorism act, and anytime the investigation, go up to a certain level of point, it stopped there, and the viewers, when we see that movies, that film, we feel that there's some sort of cover up or something, so that the criminal investigation cannot go further. How do you think about that kind of feelings?
No, I don't think that's what happened. I don't think that there was any involvement by the government to stop the investigation. What I think is that for a long time there wasn't a lot of interest at the FBI in pursuing these cases. And then when there was, which happened back in 1995, about 15 years after the crime started happening, I think it was a very hard case to do. And that even at that time, there wasn't a ton of resources put into it.
Okay. We're talking about acts of terrorism.
Right.
The lives of Vietnamese journalism.
Right.
Can you explain why, the law enforcement, they have, like you said, very little interest in finding or bringing people to justice? Why is that?
I think for a long time, these were cases that they didn't really understand, and that there were a lot of cases out there, and I think that they failed. I mean, the truth is they failed. They didn't do what they needed to do, and that's why we made this film. That's why we did this reporting, because we felt that American law enforcement had let down the Vietnamese American community.
Okay. So may I reasonably infer that if you admit that this is a failure from law enforcement at that time,
right,
and now you reopen the file, will you finish what you start?
I would like to, but it's going to take the help of the community. It's going to take people coming forward and sharing what they know.
Okay. So far, what kind of cooperation have you received from the people that you want to talk to?
I've spoken to many people. We did 140 interviews for this project. So anybody who says that we weren't in touch with the community is wrong. We were on a daily basis. This is what I would say. I think there's a lot of information pointing in the direction of the Mat Tran in some of these cases. And I don't think it's conclusive, but I think that's where a lot of the information lies. Not all of them necessarily, but there have definitely been people within the group who were members of the group who said, yes, we were involved in assassinations, we were involved in attacks on people. And I'll give you an example. In the early 80s, one of the members that went with the Mat Tran to set up their camp in Thailand left the group, and he went home to Hawaii, and he eventually went to the FBI, and he said, hey, the front is trying to kill me because I've left the group, and they think I'm going to say bad things about them. When I was in the camp, Mr. Wang Ko-min killed two of the recruits, two of the members of the front in the camp, and I was told there that he was putting out the order to assassinate two different journalists in the U.S. And let me tell you, don't stop me.
No.
This is what he told the FBI. The FBI did not do a good job following it up. We followed it up, and we found someone who knew all about that incident, who had been a member of the front, who said, yes, what you've read is true, and I was involved in that whole situation. There was an assassination order put out on this gentleman. The things that he said were true. I was directly involved. We did not assassinate him. But yes, these things happened. So that's what makes me think that there's a strong likelihood that the front is responsible for some of these crimes. People will say it's hearsay. People will say this and that. But the truth is that we spoke to people who were very, very close to these crimes, and they gave us that kind of corroborating information.
Okay. And even with all the details that you just presented to the audience, to us, you still admitted that you cannot conclusively stating that who is the culprit.
Right.
Conclusively, that's the key word that you said.
Because this is what we would love somebody to come forward and confess and say, I'm the person that killed Đạm Phong. I'm the person that killed Lâm. I'm the person who killed Lê Triết. I mean, that's why, because we haven't gotten to the actual gunmen at this point, and we would love to hear from them.
Okay, so at best, up to this point, all your inconclusive statement is based on inference and innuendos. Let me finish first, okay? And when the jury is still out on the issue, and you yourself, you said that you cannot conclusively making a statement on this matter. So the jury is still out. So why don't we wait until you have a more complete investigation to present the result to people, instead of we throw out all kind of inference, innuendos, labeling. Is that a good journalism?
Yeah, so check this out. I actually didn't throw out any innuendos, didn't throw out any inferences. What I actually did is I talked to people, like, for example, a former front member who said, yes, we killed these people. That was a very direct statement. It's not an innuendo. It's not an inference. It's not a labeling people. It's a direct statement. And the statement is, we killed these two particular people. Now, do I have the evidence is that conclusive? No, it's a statement of somebody who would be in a good position to know, but it's not conclusive because I need more information to corroborate. Is there a lot of evidence pointing to the front to that being true? Yes, there's plenty of evidence in that direction. So none of this is innuendo, even though you'd like to say so. None of it is an inference. This is information coming directly from people who were deep in this world, in that organization, who have knowledge about these crimes. Many people said the group had a unit that was attacking people. This was something that was told to us by many people who had direct knowledge of it. And it wasn't inference, it wasn't innuendo, it was direct knowledge.
Yeah, that is a semantic game, because no matter, I use innuendos and you say, no, it's not innuendos. But if you put, everything together, it seems like, again, we don't have any conclusive answer. So we leave it at that. But in the documents that are published by PBS, say, there's a paragraph. It says, in later conversation with Nguyễn Xuân Nghĩa, we confronted with evidence of the front violence. Nguyễn Xuân Nghĩa, in a videotape interview, Nghĩa said it was quite possible that the front members, were behind the assassination. That is, to me, it's a very persuasive, very convincing evidence. Why didn't you use it in the film?
That was an editing decision that I didn't make. There's a lot of people that go into the, I felt like that too. And let me tell you, if it had been my choice, I would have used it. I advocated to use that interview. And to elaborate more, what Mr. Nguyễn Xuân Nghĩa said on camera is he said there was a faction of the front that was violent, that wanted to bring armed struggle to the U.S. And that was their position. And it actually caused a rift within the group because other people didn't agree with that. But his statements are that there was a violent faction within the group that thought that they could solve problems through violence here in the U.S. So to me, that's a quite interesting, compelling statement. It doesn't get you all the way. But the thing that was more compelling is that when we turned off the camera, he said to us, he had sat in a meeting with other front members where they planned to assassinate Mr. Do Nak Yen from Noi Viet. And
You said the name what?
Mr. Do Nak Yen.
Okay. You said Do Nak Yen?
Yeah.
The editor of Người Việt?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And that Mr. Nia had talked them out of it. But this is a statement that he made to me. He made it to our director, Rick Rowley. It was a quite compelling statement suggesting that the group was involved in violent activity against journalists. It's a point-blank statement. We asked our other cameraman if he'd heard it, and he said, no, I didn't hear it, but wow, that's crazy. We called our editors immediately. We told our translator very shortly after that. So many people either heard about it or knew about it right away. And to me, that was another quite compelling piece of information suggesting that the front was likely involved in violent activities at times in the U.S.
Yeah. During this candid conversation, up to this point, there's more than once that you told the audience that you have no control, as to how to name the film, how to edit. So this is my feeling, okay? Right. If this is my work product and my superior, they cut and they modify those kind of things, and it affect my work product negatively. Do I have a say into that? Do you have any say into the final product?
Well, here's a question for you. How involved are you going to be in editing this segment?
Okay. Say, for example, I don't sit down and edit it myself, but I will ask, to look at it, especially, if it has a very important implication, and it involves a large community in the country, I want to see it. And because, after, all the shortcomings about the title, about other things that open for misinterpretation, whose reputation is a target? Yours.
So here's the situation. Here's the reality. Okay. Is in a project like this where there's two big organizations involved, many different decision makers. Decisions get made above me, they get made below me. I don't have control over everything, and nobody who's working in that kind of environment does. We weigh in, we offer our opinions, and there have been things that I've strongly suggested to change. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I don't get to control everything, and nobody in that position does. Okay. And if there were things that I felt were so that I was so unhappy with that I didn't want to be associated with, I would take my name off the project or say, no, you just absolutely can't do that.
Okay. So based on your own words, there are mistakes, but you have no control over those mistakes.
No, I'm not saying there's mistakes. What I'm saying is there are things that I would have possibly done slightly differently. A film is a collaborative process. There are editors involved. There are directors involved. There are videographers involved. There are senior editors involved. The film that you make as a team might not be my director's cut, right? That's the same with any film out there. Okay,
so assume that's not a mistake, but based on your own words, it seems like you don't have a say, you don't have a control, you don't. Okay.
No.
And if you had it your way, it may be different in some way.
No, what I'm saying, I'm not saying that I don't have control. You're misstating my statement. What I'm saying.
The audience will listen to this conversation. Okay, I try not to distort or.
What I'm saying is that in any one of these collaborative processes, there's many people that have input, and I'm one of the people that has input. I have a lot of input. Would things be a little bit different if it was a director's cut and I was in control? Yeah, I would have made it 90 minutes long. There would have been a lot more context in there. There would have been different interviews in there. But we had 52 minutes, and at the end of the day, the film that we make is the film that the whole team can agree on. And the other thing with the interview with Mr. Nia is that we included that information on our web story. So part of the thing that we were trying to do is to get that information out through another channel and to offer that information to people through the web, and realizing that the film can't do everything.
Okay. And on the legal aspects of this matter, one FBI agent, the former Tran Wilcox, Tang Wilcox, she correctly said that there's no statute of limitation for murder, for homicide. Okay, so right now I know you do this project first in the interest of good journalism. Now, with the new information, say if it comes out, will you and your organization pursue the interest of justice? You know what I mean, right?
Absolutely. Look,
Yeah.
if information comes out and it says the front was involved in this, we'll chase that. If information comes out and it says the front wasn't involved with this, we'll chase that. If information comes out and it says this person was killed over a dispute about money or love or something else, we will report that story. And that was our intention from the beginning. We never had an agenda. We went where information took us. And in the case of someone like Đạm Phong is writing stories that criticize the front. He's getting calls from the front. He's getting told, hey, we will give you money if you quit writing about us. And then he has a meeting with front members at Vietnam Kitchen on Milam Street in Houston. And they say, quit publishing these stories. It is a reasonable suspicion to say, hey, I wonder if they're involved with his death.
Okay, one thing is reasonable suspicion. Another thing is conclusive answer to the crime.
And we haven't presented a conclusive answer. And in the film, I'm very clear about saying
that's what I repeatedly from the beginning of this candid conversation. I say, we do want again. I'm not in position to defend one organization or something else. Okay, I'm here. In one way, I am on your side. I'm urging you to finish what you start.
Right.
Okay, and again, half loaf of bread is bread.
Right.
But half truth is more than truth is the true lie. Okay, so with that, my question is. When I ask you about the whether this is in the interest of justice, what is your plan for the near or for the far future, or how do you finish this project, or we just leave the audience with their own interpretation, their own guess?
Have you looked at my website?
Not yet.
Okay, well, if you looked at my website, you would see that we have a YouTube video asking people in both the Vietnamese language and English for more information. We have a web page asking people for more information, whether they were a victim of the crimes, whether they know about the crimes, or whether they were a perpetrator of the crimes, to contact us via snail mail, via email, via phone, in English or Vietnamese. And so we're actively reaching out to people. I would love anyone watching this show to contact us. If they can go online, look at the ProPublica website, and the contact information is there.
Thank you, AC. And then another question, the timing of this film. Why now? Why not 10 years ago? Why not 20 years ago? Why now, 30 years after, all the evidence perhaps buried under the ashes? Why?
Part of it is that in the last couple of years, a lot of journalists have been killed, right? You mentioned James Foley. There's the Charlie Hebdo story in France. And we felt that those cases were getting a lot of attention. And the cases that happened in this community didn't get attention. They didn't get attention from the English language media. They didn't get attention from law enforcement. They didn't get attention from the federal government. And we felt that that was a mistake. We felt like that was unfair treatment, and we wanted to redress that. And we also knew that if we didn't do a story now, that most of the people involved might get so old that we couldn't actually find out what happened. That there's still people who are alive from that time period. There's still people who know. But if we were to wait, then it would be harder to do. And we felt like this was possibly the last chance that we'd have to look into this chapter and try to understand what happened.
Okay. Perhaps this is the last question. Okay. Say, throughout the film, what you call failure of the law enforcement from state level to federal level to bring out the justice. Another way to look at it, perhaps again, reasonable interpretation, reasonable inference. Whether like the powerful authority, they either cover up or they turn a blind eye on this kind of violent acts. What do you think about that? Okay, to me, reasonable inference. To me, what do you think?
So, I absolutely think that in the early days, that law enforcement turned a blind eye to it. And this is what I believe, and this is why we did the stories, is because the Vietnamese American community at that time was not powerful enough, was not vocal enough to put a lot of pressure on law enforcement. And so these were crimes that they didn't necessarily have to pay as much attention to as they should have. I think your inference is correct. I think that's absolutely what happened, and that was why we did these stories. Later on, it's interesting because there became more interest in these cases from law enforcement as the Vietnamese American community became more established in the U.S. And I think that those two things may well go hand in hand. That by the 90s, the FBI is paying a lot more attention.
Yeah.
And that was also in part because the Committee to Protect Journalists in the 90s raised this as an issue and said, look, there have been 5 assassinations in the Vietnamese American community. Nobody's been arrested. There's no other ethnic community in the U.S. where that has happened. We need to make this a priority.
Okay, so my next is a follow-up question. Okay, I do not contradict myself. Based on your presentation, okay, another reasonable inference. When you talk to the Prime Minister in Thailand, even the Prime Minister say, this group, they are very, they get strong support, those kind of things, okay? And then with the turning the blind eye in America, one may infer that, okay, actually, the real culprit is not any organization, it's not the front, even though perhaps, I don't know whether they did or not, but behind all those things, there's a power, the authority. And the reason I say that because in your documentary, you mentioned about the Neutrality Act.
Yeah.
Okay. It brings my attention to other operation like the bear pigs in Cuba, those things. So the real culprit in doing this is not any organization but some people behind the scene. So those are the people that really violate the Neutrality Act. So
you think there were people behind the scenes?
They set in motion everything.
I mean, here's the thing, is that we thought early on, is there U.S. intelligence involvement here? Was the CIA involved in some way? Was the DOD involved in more about the Defense Department in a more direct way? And we just haven't found it because the old front members that we would speak to, we'd always ask them that, right? We'd say, hey, did you get any support from the CIA? And they tended to tell us no. I mean, they all told us no. They would all say, no, the person that helped us was Richard Armitage, and that was as a personal favor. Is it possible there was U.S. government involvement in the background? Yes. I can't prove it either way. I mean, that was certainly a question that we pursued. Now, when we were in Thailand, the former Prime Minister General, General Chavalit, his implication seemed to be that there was some kind of U.S. support. This was something we heard from other people that knew the front there as well. But again, it was just something that we couldn't prove one way or another.
Thank you. So just to conclude this conversation,
I'd love. Could I add one more thing before you do?
yeah, please.
You know, on the title, and I appreciate you bringing that up, and I don't want to sound defensive, okay?
Okay.
I want to tell the community this, absolutely, unequivocally. There was no intent to offend people. There was no intent to upset people. We could have titled the film, The Search for the Killers of the Vietnamese American Journalists. What we were trying to basically say is, look, Vietnamese Americans have been terrorized. They deserve justice, they deserve support, and we deserve to know what happened. That's what we were trying to convey. And I apologize to anyone if they felt like that was not what was conveyed and they didn't like the title.
Okay. Let me conclude this conversation by saying that, actions speak louder than 1,000 words. I hope that, okay, if you dare to finish what you start, and you need any helps from, the Vietnamese people, perhaps I am, the one that volunteer whatever within my capacity to help you. But put it this way, you already said it. So take the action. Whatever the next theme, or on your website, or any publication, I hope that you broadcast the information about the Vietnamese community that you have now, and I believe you didn't have earlier, that we, the Vietnamese community living in America and overseas, this is a community that we promote peace, democracy. We have been tortured, we have been persecuted, and we don't need to be further victimized by the media. So that is my suggestion, that take action and finish what you have started.
I will absolutely do that. And like I said, we definitely did not intend to offend anybody. I have great love and admiration for the Vietnamese American community. Every day when we were working on this project, we heard from people who had been tortured, who'd been in re-education camps, who had suffered greatly. And that was something that we were definitely aware of. It may not come across the way we'd like to in the finished product, but that is something that we absolutely know. I will tell you that one of our translators, when I met with him and had dinner with his brother said, look, I spent 10 years in a re-education camp and I survived by eating bugs. That was the life I lived. And so I definitely deeply felt the pain that people had. And I'm sorry if they felt that didn't come through in the film.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.